I just want to.
Okay.
Scott, one of the things that I look at as a caregiver for my mother, who's a suicide elder, is how we can really address some of the issues that we're looking at for our elders, because they're all we have left, and we have to uplift them. And in 2010, I think there was a legislation that dealt with the caregivers and for elders, and Mother has benefited from the tour services and this kind of thing, which I think is absolutely wonderful. And we are regulated through those government grants, through the grant, I think it was, I have it here, I think it was Title VI, Part A and C, that they were involved in passing, and so there's a lot of things going on for that. But what I want to know is, one of the things that I consider an important issue is we have a lot of Chickasaw elders out there that need food, nutrition, need benefits, and they probably meet the money guidelines as far as income, but they've got savings, and that savings account is capped at a very low level for them to get that government benefit. And a lot of these Chickasaw elder, especially the women, have been saving a long time, and they have a little bit of a nest egg that's security for them. Do you see any way that the Chickasaw legislative branch could pass any money that could supplement some of this caregiving for those that are not provided because they have money in a bank account?
Yes, I do.
And how would that happen?
And of course, I'm not a legislator yet,
yes,
but this is my theory, and this is my plan. You don't stick to the status quo. You create policies. You went from the people you represent, and me coming from where I come from, and me having the law practice now, time after time after time, I'm hearing these complaints that resonate with me just from my brothers and sisters. And so I know we're not unique. It's happening over and over again. So we take those ideas, and as legislators, we draft the policies. We come up with the solutions, and we put it on the table. And then we have to educate our people, because if we don't educate our people, they're not going to know what policies was on the table. They're not going to know who voted for what, or why, if they voted against or for. We need to educate the people, take this information back to the people, and so where they can see. And as legislators, then, rather than one branch of the government having influence over another branch, they're not going to have so much influence, because they're going to be concerned with being re-elected. And then if they're concerned with that, they're going to be more likely to vote independently. And independently, in my opinion, is if you have something on the table and you absolutely love the next legislator, personal relationship, you absolutely love it, but you disagree on this policy, you vote differently on that policy. You vote your mind. And someone asked earlier, if it's at spur of the moment, you don't have a whole lot of time to think about it, you have to rely on your beliefs, because that's what you were elected on. And I would rather lose the support of someone because they disagreed with a new that I believe in, rather than have their support on something that I don't really believe in. Because in those situations, you're going to fail your people.
So what kind of due diligence would you do to see that happens?
It would all start with the people. You hear these complaints because you can't just hypothetically think of things that are wrong in the interior of our tribe. You have to get out there, you have to explore, investigate. For my position, I'm fortunate enough to have them coming to me in my office, and so I hear, when you hear that someone has been discriminated against because they're Chickasaw by a non-Chickasaw, a superior non-Chickasaw, over and over and over, there's got to be policies in place to enforce the policies. We have some good policies. They're just not being enforced.
You mentioned, so I get it right, the three branch,
Checks and
shall we
balances.
say, non-checks and balances?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how you describe it. And then I'm going to tag that with your statement on educate the people. Do you think that is an area, the checks and balances, that our people as a whole need educated on, and even the branches themselves being educated on. And so, is there a way to educate people on what they should do, like legislators? Send you off to legislative school. So many people keep going back to these seminars and saying, okay, this is how, these are new things, this is what you need to do, kind of boost you back up, retraining or whatever you call it.
Yes, I think there is. First of all, as far as the legislators are concerned, that's why we need well-educated legislators, because in theory, we should know what we're doing when we go in there, or have a good idea. Obviously, any new position, you're going to have to learn the ropes of that new position. But we should be educated enough and have a pretty good idea of what we're in there for, and pass policies, resolutions, in the tribal sense, acquire land, and just everything that we should know what we're doing. The people, yes, that's a little harder. There is a way to educate them. One is the internet, putting the sessions on the internet. I'm wholeheartedly for that, because the people, we're entitled to know what our government is doing. And I give you, I said I have a little qualification with that, because there's going to be certain issues that are within the session that are confidential and maybe proprietary to the tribe. Especially deal with Mr. Watson's question with finances. You have to be real careful with that, because if you break it down to expenditures, then are you going to break it down into contracts, bid numbers that you put in for bids on contracts, and are you going to disclose profit margins? Are you going to allow somebody to backdoor their way in to beat you out of contracts? So there's going to be some issues I wouldn't support being broadcast, but I think 90% of the sessions should be broadcast, and that's going to be one little step, one incremental step to spark the interest of Chickasaw people and make all of us get involved. Because if we don't all get involved, there's a discrepancy. It's kind of like a mini America. There's a discrepancy in the Chickasaws in the upper portion of the tribe and the lower portion. And the lower portion getting left behind. And it's not so much the people in our positions, because we know how to protect ourselves. But there's too many Chickasaws who don't know how to protect themselves. They don't know how to speak and have their voice heard, and that's who I want to speak for.
I think you've hit on an important aspect of the relationship within our government. The legislature can pass laws, resolutions, that the other branch is supposed to implement. If they choose not to implement it in the way that the legislature intended, is there a way that the legislature can influence the proper implementation of what they intended?
Yes, there is. Through policies, the legislature's job to put the policy to enact them, and then it's the executive branch's job to enforce that. When a Chickasaw is aggrieved or they're mistreated or they have an action, that's where the judicial branch comes in, and that's part of the checks and balances. And we need policies, even though what we have, if it was enforced, there are remedies for Chickasaws who've been mistreated, wrongly terminated, but they're not being enforced. And so what the legislature could do is pass many policies, so to speak, many policies that put more pressure on those branches and educate the Chickasaw people again as to those remedies. There's too many Chickasaws that don't know about their remedies. They're mistreated, wrongly terminated, discriminated against, and then all they can do is just fade away into the horizon. They don't know how to speak back. And that's where we have to educate them and put remedies in place and promote them to enforce those remedies, to put pressure on legislators, the people in the positions, to do what they're supposed to do and follow the policies and the laws and the Constitution of the Chickasaw Nation.
Any other questions?
Okay. Scott, do you feel it's important as a legislator to introduce new legislative action and sponsor those legislative actions as a person coming in? Do you think that's important that as a legislator, every legislator should have under their name policies that they've introduced and supported? Do you think that's important, or should they just be a part of what's already being presented?
Okay, and you're asking me to express a point of view about myself
Yes.
onto someone else. I don't know. My personality, there's absolutely no way I would go into the legislative branch and not have sponsored bills or resolutions under my name. If you're more comfortable with just voting on what comes across the desk, that's not me. I mean, personally on the side, I would probably advocate and encourage you to sponsor bills, because as legislators, if we're talking to the people, nothing's perfect. There's got to be problems. We've got to be addressing something.
Yes, currently at this time, most legislation is not developed within the legislative branch. Do you feel like that all legislation, do you think majority of legislation should be developed within the legislative branch, or should it be received from other branches to be voted upon?
I wouldn't necessarily put a percentage on what should and shouldn't be developed in the legislature, because the whole idea is to pass policies and law that benefit the people. And if the executive branch or the judicial branch or some citizen comes up with a good idea, I think the most important thing is to get it to the legislative branch. And I think that all legislation should be passed or not passed in the legislative branch.
Yes, I've got one. Would you expound on that a little bit more? What you just said.
Yeah, I think that all ideas that would, if enacted as policies or laws, should be welcomed from anywhere. Even if it was from a non-Chickasaw that had an idea, and obviously they can't come in and vote and be part of the legislature, but I think all ideas should be considered, and if worthy of it, the legislators get together and come up with a policy and sponsor that and try to enact that if we all agree that it's going to benefit the Chickasaw people.
Go ahead.
Well, as a good steward for the Chickasaw people, if a resolution was presented to you, say in the morning of the legislative meeting, would you vote to table that until it could be studied, or would you vote on it at that point?
Oh, most definitely to table it and have more time to consider it. I mean, hands down, the more time you can consider something, the more time you can hypothetically come up with how this is going to impact the people, what's this going to do to the budget. If you're not going to do anything to the budget, where's the money going to come from? You need adequate time to consider those things.
Okay. Yeah.
Somewhat out of left field, but how do you feel about per capita payments?
Per capita payments? I'm definitely not against per capita payments. Where I would have an issue with per capita payments was if it was going to be detrimental to the programs that we have in place right now. They're real beneficial. If we can get successful enough to keep those programs in place, continue to grow, and start easing into small per capita payments, I would be all for that, because I think there's a lot of Chickasaws that are just in a position in their life that they can't get employment, or they're struggling right now, and per capita payments would really be a good supplement to them.
Do you think the role of the legislator should be full-time, or do you think that a person can have another full-time job and do the role of the legislator?
I don't think you could be a full-time, or I don't think you could be a legislator and have a full-time job elsewhere, because if you are, you're neglecting the Chickasaw people. I don't think it's possible. There's not enough hours in the day.
Right?
If you were elected as a legislator, and at the year end, you've seen the expenditures go through, would you want to see exactly what was approved versus what was actually spent? Just the totals, not individual counts or anything, but per program, what was actually authorized and what was actually expended.
Most definitely. I think that the legislators should have access to all the numbers, because the more we're educated on that, the better informed we are, the better decisions we can make that's going to eventually affect the people.
Thank you.